Good day, everyone. Today, I'll be talking about how we've implemented a data strategy in a landscape with various degree of data maturity. But before anything else, let me just quickly introduce myself. I'm John Bibal II, and I'm currently the Director for Data Engineering in Globe Telecom under the Enterprise Data Office. I've been a software engineer for 17 years and heading data engineering team for 5 years now. I'm also actively participating in the digital transformation within our organization, from process improvement to being data-driven. Most probably, or everyone agrees that data is the new oil. I'm pretty sure in your own organization, you'll be hearing lines like, we need to have data, or we need to be data-driven, or let's apply artificial intelligence and machine learning, and so on. And you probably heard a lot of success stories by companies globally that disrupted the market are those that heavily uses data in their day-to-day operations. They're operating hyper-personalization, customizing experiences to a point that it seems that they know each and every customer they serve. And many also failed because they jumped in too quickly and invested so much in infrastructure and data teams without establishing the foundations. Working on a big data requires a lot of investments from talents, which are becoming more expensive, and of course, the compute and storage it will require. Some fail because there is no clear definition of the demand, how and what exactly they'll be doing with their data. Like from the question of what to collect up to how do we process. And then some failed because after onboarding a highly skilled team, setting up a very robust infrastructure, having an expensive big data tools, the data team lacks business acumen. This affects the output of your data team, the challenge of providing relevant insights and models. And then both data team and then the management will end up, getting frustrated since the data team is probably working hard around the clock. But management and stakeholders has this impression that they still don't have data. These scenarios are common, even with a different department inside an organization. So it's not easy. And definitely, it doesn't happen overnight. It's actually a continuous or iterative process as we build new platforms, new features, and new data sources. So, how do you go about it? It is important to understand the most critical component towards this journey, the data team. This team can be interpreted or defined in different ways, where a department or a group can actually say they have a data team, where the talents are knowledgeable, if not experts, in crunching data, either via Excel or other spreadsheet type of tool. Or they have a database administrator who can process data from different sources. And then probably the same talent has the capability of visualizing the data using pivot tables or other chart-making tools. Then there's a talent who's very knowledgeable with a business that tries to make sense of the reports and then the dashboards. So this setup actually works, so don't get me wrong. But with big data, this will not help you scale your business. So it's essential to understand what consists or what defines a data team. Business groups nowadays demand more than just the usual day-to-day reports. This data team is expected to do ad hoc analysis where questions are being answered by testing hypotheses to show unexpected insights. Special techniques may be applied such as predictive models or even apply machine learning to determine patterns which can't be easily seen by your regular dashboards. And more importantly, the data team we needed today operates as a core function of the business that recommends decisions and strategy based on data. But not every department needs the most advanced data team. It really depends on where they are now in terms of data maturity. So if you search for data maturity model, there you'll see a definition with 4 stages, 5, 6, and so on. But in our case, we have 5. So let's go through this one by one. First, we need to identify and understand the KPIs needed by the department. This is where a data governance team plays an important role. Your data governance team helps define standard KPIs so we avoid inconsistencies. Inconsistencies may arise like a department, for example, the department is reporting we have 98% acquisition, but then another team or another department reports that acquisition for this quarter declined. And that's because they have 2 different definitions of what acquisition is. So if there's a conflict in terms of rules and definition, these items are being discussed and gets resolved in our monthly data governance board, where stakeholders, business heads, and representatives of the different teams or departments are present. Having these regular sessions keeps everyone across the enterprise in sync. We also need to look into business KPIs and operations KPIs, as both are critical to serve or serves a different purpose in the day-to-day of the company. In the early stage of our journey, we started catering only to business insights or reports. But as we understand the business more, we realized that even the data needs of the operations is vital in supporting the business KPIs. So data nowadays is not just focused on business strategy and revenue, but it's also equally important for operational efficiency. And with clear business KPIs and standards, it will be easier to apply data quality measurements, which helps build trust and accuracy across the organization. Because based on our experience, once the business doubted the accuracy of your data, your team will be spending so much time proving that you are providing a clean and accurate reports or data or insights. Second is centralization of data or having a single source of truth. No doubt, a siloed data greatly contributes to the inconsistencies in general. It is important to store data in one place, a place or a storage that is governed, which allows different groups to create consistent report sourced from the same data, adhering to the same business rules. It also makes tracing and investigation easier, as you can easily establish lineage from central storage all the way up to the data sources. Third is setting up data visualization and self-service. We have this thing called managed reports, where these are the dashboards commonly used by the business or by the department. Prior to setting them up, they have this type of reports existing already, but using the traditional way. And for us to move forward, this needs to be transitioned to the centralized data. So in our setup, we went through rationalization exercise where we analyzed all the critical data or reports being generated across the organization. And as a central data team, we focused on setting this up from rebuilding the dashboards and visualizations connected to the centralized data. It was a big effort, considering there were like 6,000 plus reports catering to the different groups in the organization. That's because each team within the department have their own way of looking at the data. So we were able to cut this down to around 900 plus by creating parameterized dashboards to provide more flexibility. And because we went through defining business and operations KPI at the early stage, which was led by our data governance team, it helped us focus on how to show the data differently, but still addresses the business needs. Then we also set up the self-service environment, which allowed the department and businesses to play around with the data or even create their own reports as needed, but with the confidence that they are using the same data being used across the enterprise. And it's the same data that's being governed and it's being regularly checked by our data quality team. Fourth is insighting, the ability to explore and answer unexpected questions. With a centralized data and self-service capability, data analysts embedded in the business can already process data and produce ad hoc analysis. These will ease up the bottleneck in the central data team and allowing them to work on more critical analytical requirements. But given the different skills or levels of each group, it is critical as the central data team to handhold them, like guide them, and enable them in using the tools and applying best practices. So we have several programs for enablement, such as we set up data clinic, where similar to a hospital, there's a resident data architect, a data analyst, data engineers, a data governance person, and so on. Roles that are critical to the data value chain. Then the employees across the organization can consult in those specific time slots. We also created an internal community to help individuals interested to learn more about data, where we conduct sessions on insighting, sharing use cases, success stories, and new technologies. Because as being data-driven, it's not just about tools or technologies, but it's also a mindset or a culture change. These are just a few examples of enablement programs we're doing to increase the adoption of the self-service capability we built. Then lastly, advanced analytics, which will allow us to create predictive and prescriptive output. Data scientists will play a very important role in this stage, where predictive models or even artificial intelligence and machine learning will be applied to optimize business operation at scale. There may be challenges in terms of the different groups understanding the benefits of advanced analytics. And based on our experience, there's always that resistance of applying models, given that marketing are used to their own process of, let's say, generating recommendations. And of course, as a business, they have targets. So experimenting or executing an actual campaign using predictive models is being put to the back burner, given that the accuracy and effectiveness hasn't been proven. So it's like a chicken and egg situation where they will only use it if it will be effective. But at the same time, models needs to be tested to probably recalibrate to make it more effective. Now, each department or groups within organization lands on different stages of the maturity ladder. And for sure, they have their own interpretation on where they are now. One of the things common to an organization is most probably they've set up a central data team, which is equipped and knowledgeable when it comes to big data. And all data related request is being routed to this central team, which became a bottleneck along the way. This led us to find ways on how can we serve the different analytical needs given the limited talents we have in the central data team. So I'll be sharing some things we've done So first is understanding the business needs. As a central data team, which is very familiar with the technical side of things, understanding the business is the key to better come up with the data strategy in enabling the business. We came up with an initiative which we call Analytics Advocate, where key talents are being assigned to key business units. These advocates participates in management meetings, strategy and planning sessions, and serves as a central spoke of the central data team in the business. This gave us a better view of how the business think, how they use the data, and help them identify areas where we can help them answer business questions using data. So this led us to create the 5 stages of data maturity, which I've presented earlier. Second, we aligned the 5 stages of data maturity with the different business units and what it means for them, so that we will have the same understanding on where they are now after we assess them and where we want them to be. Third is we do the assessment so we know what type of intervention we need to do depending on at which stage they are in. Then based on our assessment, when we started this a few years back, each group has been processing their own data using their own tool, generating reports or insights, and probably leading to inconsistencies across the organization. So I think this scenario is common with other companies as well. But with this approach, resource or talent might be fully allocated. So there's some caveat or a potential downside of it as well. And probably you'll encounter some resistance from traditional teams. But again, even if we already identify the gaps, transformation is a journey. Business can stop, so we can apply the data strategy. They will still continue what they're doing. So as a central data team, we need to catch up and think of a way that we can push the data strategy agenda, but at the same time, not disrupting how they run the business. So our approach was to implement a hybrid data teams. So what do I mean by hybrid data team? It is a central data team responsible for defining the method and practices in terms of the whole data value chain. Then a data or an analytics person or a team from the business group, usually under marketing, is needed to work closely with that central data team. And because majority of the talents in the business analytics team are mostly analysts, we needed to bridge the skills gap in order to go through the different stages of the data maturity. Thus, a cross-functional squad is necessary. So in our setup, these squads are funded by the business units, which turns out to be their some sort of investment in going data driven. It consists of the following roles: data engineers, which will help automate the data pipelines from setting up the central data storage to data processing needed by the dashboards, by your insights models, or by your AI/ML. Next is data analyst, which will help develop the dashboards and then the insights and find meaning to those data. Third is a data architect, which will help identify the data sources that will be relevant depending on the requirements. And then last is the data scientist, which will work on the predictive and prescriptive analytics for those probably at the early stages of the maturity. This is not needed immediately, as it's important that we focus on setting up the foundation. So the goal of the cross-functional squad are the following. First is they're responsible for migrating and automating existing reports and dashboards from the central data storage and visualization platform. We need to guide them to move to the new setup. This will lessen the manual processing being done by the analytics team in the business group. Second is to work closely together with the business analytics team to build new dashboards and insights based on what they're seeing now in terms of the business strategy. And the third is to enable or perform knowledge transfer to equip the analytics team in the business with the right skills to sustain the growth. So these are just temporary data team that will work closely with the business analytics team. So, in summary, I would like you to have these key takeaways. So first, understanding the business needs is key. It's the number one thing. There are a lot of things we can do with the data, and it's not cheap to process data. So we really need to focus that investment to relevant things that will help drive improve business and operations KPIs. Second, being data-driven requires maturity. And there's a reason why it is defined in stages. Organization and department needs to build the foundation for every stage to get to the desired data-driven state. Of course, there are things in the ladder that can be done in parallel. But I guess what I want to highlight is having the right foundation will help you sustain this journey. And last, no matter how good your central data team is, it can't have an infinite resources, and the demand for data will grow exponentially. So the key is decentralize and democratize access. The hybrid setup I mentioned earlier can be a catalyst to push the data strategy agenda, in which case it worked for us. So I'm not saying that all groups in Globe are in the fifth stage already. But again, we're still going through this journey and we are learning along the way. And that ends my presentation. Thank you very much.